So the other day in my video, I summarized pretty much all the new stuff and some of the modifications coming to Dark Heresy, Warhammer 40k, the game being made by Owlcat. And that same day, Owlcat dropped some more information on the so-called investigation system. And I think it's safe to say that of all the things that are changing or being modified in Dark Heresy compared to Rogue Trader, the investigation system is the biggest difference. In fact, in Rogue Trader, you don't really have an investigation system. That's not what the game is about. The investigation system is the core feature, the core concept that is baked into Dark Heresy. It's what makes the game a game about the Inquisition set in the Warhammer 40k universe. So that's kind of important. And, fortunately, as I just said, Owlcat was nice enough to drop some details. Now, as I talk about these things, I will be posting some images that they have offered us, which, of course, have not been finalized, but nonetheless offer some insight or some ideas as to how the system will look and how it will function. So basically, Dark Heresy features a detective-style investigation system as a core gameplay mechanic. And since you're an acolyte of the Inquisition, you have to do this all the time. It's your job, basically. And you have to work through multiple cases. Some of these cases are going to be minor, as in not super important, ostensibly, and others are going to be very, very important or even critical. And regardless, all of these investigations will have consequences for the entire Calixis sector. Now, how does this process work? It's basically something that can be broken down into 4 main steps or maybe stages. The first step would involve you finding clues as a player. So the player collects evidence from crime scenes, maybe objects, substances, looks at symbols, gets testimonies of witnesses maybe. And sometimes these clues are obvious, and sometimes they require specific skills or even tools to help you find them and make sure you're on the right track. And sometimes clues can be misleading or even dangerous. The second part of this involves special tools. And this is the primary tool set of the Inquisitor. And this comes down to things like servo skulls that have unique functions with different types of lighting, scanning, analysis, recording that aid you in your detective work. After you've gone through these steps, you then engage in proper conclusion drawing. So you have to see what has been gathered so far and what you make of all the clues that have been assembled. So you have a detective journal that helps you organize all these clues and all the data for each case. And then as a player, or Inquisitor, better put, you need to analyze all this information, find the connections between the different clues, and build theories. And you're not alone in this because your companions will offer advice and expertise, where they have expertise, of course, to assist you in this task. And finally, the last part, and I would argue the most difficult part, just thinking about your role and your job as an Inquisitor, is passing judgment. And so to close a case, you have to file a report to the Inquisitor or within the Inquisition. And this is a really crucial step because players can choose to falsify these reports for whatever reason. They can accuse innocent parties intentionally or even due to drawing incorrect conclusions and making the incorrect deductions when it comes to these investigations. And the main point of this is, regardless of how you pass judgment, regardless of how you decide, the decisions you make, the judgments you pass, whether they're fair or not, will carry consequences. And that is, of course, wildly different from anything you have in Rogue Trader. And this is, above all, I think, the most important feature in Dark Heresy that distinguishes it from Rogue Trader and really possibly any other game out there in 40k. I might be wrong about that. But certainly that's the main takeaway. In addition to all this other stuff, which I would say sort of feeds into that theme and into the investigations you're participating in. Now, what are some takeaways here? Well, I think more maybe so than even Rogue Trader, it is meant to be grim. I mean, grim dark is the name of the game. When it comes to Warhammer 40k, well, this type of atmosphere with investigation within the Inquisition is basically designed to immerse you in the grim, dark, and above all, paranoid nature and secretive work of the Inquisition. And of course, there is morality here, but it's not, I think you could argue, the same type of quote-unquote objective morality you have in Rogue Trader, where you're basically choosing to be dogmatic, iconoclastic, heretical. I mean, heretical is just pretty much evil, right? Dogmatic is, well, it's dogmatic. And you could argue that iconoclast is kind of good. You're playing the good guy. And in the previous video, of course, I talked about these two inquisitorial paths, in all likelihood, Puritan versus radical. But in terms of morality, you are going to be stuck or mired down in moral ambiguity, if I had to guess. And that's what it suggests based on what Owlcat has posted. Because you're not really a truth seeker per se, although you kind of are, but rather a judge. And it's important to also look at the aspect of the utility of what you're doing with these truths, with these clues, and with the judgment that you're passing. So you could deliberately accuse innocence based on a personal bias or based on your own idea of justice, or just because it's expedient. And these choices basically form the central aspect of the role-playing experience in Dark Heresy. Now, I think that sounds pretty exciting. I think it makes for a big difference between this game and Rogue Trader, which is not to say Rogue Trader is bad. I enjoy Rogue Trader, but Rogue Trader is more of a kind of epic. You're the super powerful dude. You can do what you want. This is humble beginnings, I think. You're going to have to work your way up the hierarchy. Owlcat has said that multiple times. And I think this is going to be probably, at least for me, a better overall experience because it's more streamlined, it's more to the point, and it basically just takes care of the length issue, which increasingly in recent years I've been suffering from. Essentially, these 200-hour plus RPGs, CRPGs, which I love on some level, but also are a bit of a slog, I have to say. So I'm really looking forward to this. I'm pretty confident Owlcat can knock this out of the park. They have tons of experience with CRPGs. They have the Rogue Trader experience. And I'm looking forward to investigating things and even botching those investigations to see what happens potentially. Now, I do have one concern when it comes to this investigation system, and that is screwing things up. Because generally speaking, in games, it doesn't feel good to make mistakes and screw things up. Because typically, if you do that, especially when it comes to RPGs and even more so CRPGs, you tend to get less than satisfactory endings, less than satisfactory story progression, and you just end up being dissatisfied with what happens. And that can be something that is very difficult to circumvent, in my view. So since it's baked into the system of the investigation that we're engaging in, that we're probably going to make mistakes because it's going to be very subtle and difficult to ascertain what's real and what's not. As we make these mistakes, I hope that Owlcat figures out a way to make it fun and still rewarding at the end of the day. You don't want to, botch 50% of the investigations and then end up getting the worst ending possible and then feeling, well, I should replay the game. Not because you enjoyed the experience and just want to experience something different, because you felt sort of cheated out of a better ending, a good ending, this sort of thing. And that's kind of important. And I'm not sure how Owlcat is going to integrate that and still make it fun and fulfilling and ultimately rewarding. But if anyone can do it, it's Owlcat. They're implementing the system, so I guess we'll just have to trust them. But like I said, it's not going to be easy. It is walking a very fine line indeed. But as always, thank you for tuning in. And if you like my content and you like my takes, you can leave a like, comment, share, and subscribe. It's much appreciated. I'll check you out next time. Take care.